Hello and welcome to Culture Shock, the pop culture podcast brought to you by four aging millennials and our outdated opinion. With me today is...
I have never been nothing. I am the blood of the dragon. I am Doug.
You know, a podcast needs a topic like a sword needs a whetstone. Bastards. So, being the two Game of Thrones, I want to say experts, but more like watchers, period. The other two didn't even watch the show yet.
Bastards.
With House of the Dragon ending, we decided, what the hell, let's get together and start the seasons of Game of Thrones since we love them anyway. We may as well talk about them.
If you listen to our Jeffrey Dahmer two-man, this is going to be kind of like that, where it's going to be more information-based, like a review, less a...
We've been doing more reviewy stuff. Me and Mike did the Black Adam one. We did that. We're doing this. I mean,
Okay.
We're getting a little more into, like, we're still going to do the jokey episodes, obviously, with all of us, but we've all been getting into kind of reviewing stuff, so this is another one of those. So if you're here for it, be here for it.
As Adrian once told us drunkenly in the middle of the night, review it.
And we shall. There's no denying the powerhouse that was Game of Thrones. For a good 10 years. It was all anybody talked about. Were you on board day one?
I got into it season 3. I was one of those, like, oh, man, everybody talks about the show. Fuck this show, guys. I worked at a Sheetz, and I was literally the only guy on the night shift and all these girls every night talked about was Game of Thrones. And I was like, fuck it, I'll watch the fucking show. And I went in like a week later. I was like, so I've watched everything that exists, and I was wrong. You were all right. Fuck, show is perfect.
I had the same kind of situation. I was at work, and this one kid used to come in. I think it was in season 2 near the end. He kept talking about, damn, the episode was good last night. And I was like, I've been meaning to start that because I do like that kind of stuff, but I haven't got involved in that one yet. I was like, there's not that much of that show. I guess I'll go back. And I think I didn't even have HBO at the time, and there wasn't all these new HBO apps that just you can pay money per month. You had to actually have HBO, I think, when this first started.
Yeah, I can't remember when I know HBO Max came out right at least.
Well, HBO Max is relatively new, but there was HBO Now before that.
Oh, is that what it was?
But I don't remember when that one started. I'm pretty sure when I started watching this, I had to get HBO with my cable provider to watch it. There was like I believe a free month or a free week or two of it, and their on demand had the first season on there, and I watched it, and I was like, God damn it, now I got to get HBO.
I'm just going to say the way I watched the show was R, matey, but I'm not going to say anything else from there, at least until the later seasons. I neither confirm or deny any accusations based on what I just said.
We're not talking about the Greyjoys yet. We'll get there. But the show, it started off very... I'm a huge fan of anything medieval and fantasy. I always have been. I digest as much of it as I possibly can, and I had never read the books before this show came out. I actually didn't listen. I listened to the books. I haven't actually read these ones, but I listened to the books after I had already been watching the show. So I'm not even sure how much of these books were out when the show started. I think maybe 1 or 2 of the books, but
I think there were 4.
Oh, was there? Okay. I
want to say 4. Because this first season is, 10 years old now?
Well, is all of this already written up till season 8 and it stopped being about the books?
No, I don't think the book for 7 is out either.
No, yeah, it ends like in 6. The book ends... There's actually quite a bit that didn't get written in the books yet.
I think the book stopped when Daenerys, if we just listened to a video where a guy was mispronouncing names left and right, and it kind of stuck with me. Daenerys and Jon met for the first time. I think that's exactly where the books ended. Don't quote me on that. I haven't read them personally, but that sounds accurate to me.
Okay, well, that is still season 7, so.
Okay. Or was that the tail end of season 6 when they meet? Because then 7 was them traveling together. and then 8 was just like fucking what, or I might be mixing it up.
At the end of season 7 is when they slept together on the ship because they were on their way to Winterfell.
Yeah, but I think they met before
But
that.
there's quite a few episodes where he's in Dragonstone and talking to her about this.
I think the book ended right when they met for the first time.
Okay.
Not when they got it on the high seas to Tyrion's dismay for some reason.
You're my auntie. So I didn't actually listen to the books until well after watching the show. I think multiple seasons watched before I even listened to the books. But it started pretty strong at Winterfell, with Winter's Coming as the first episode. You're introduced to the Starks, which is one of the morally grounded families in the show, maybe one of the only morally grounded families.
Well, by the end, at least 2 of them.
Yeah.
The other 2 are kind of fucking lost their mind.
There's only so many of them left by the end of the show.
Yeah.
You meet all of them in this first season. You meet Sansa and Arya, the 2 daughters of Ned. Well, sorry, you meet Ned, of course, and Catelyn Stark, mommy and daddy. Then you meet Sansa and Arya, who are the 2 daughters. One's a tomboy, one's a girly girl. You meet Robb Stark, who's the eldest son, and then you meet Bran, who becomes a very important person in the show, and you meet...
Bran enjoys climbing things.
He enjoys climbing things, and you also meet Rickon Stark, who does not become important in this show. Spoiler alert: does not become important.
Literally forgot his existence.
But then there's Jon Snow as well, who is the bastard son. What you seem to be told is the bastard son of Ned Stark, while he was off fighting battles away from Catelyn, and that's why Catelyn hates his fucking guts.
He may be Targaryen or whatever by the end, like we find out way later, but he's a Stark through and through as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, he even, in this season, almost abandons the wall just to go be with Robb, which he was taking a chance of being beheaded even doing that. So he's clearly a Stark in his mentality.
Yeah, so... we meet all the important families. We meet the Starks, the fucking Lannisters. In this season, I can say that Jaime is a bastard.
He is a bastard,
even
man.
In this season. Later down the road, when we talk about him, it'll become better and better as time goes on. But I hate that I like him by the end. But every Lannister sucks except Tyrion.
Yeah, Tyrion's
mostly.
Pretty much the only one. And it's not even that he's morally grounded. It's that he's smart enough to know where he should be and what he should say.
And it's just, by comparison to the rest of them, he is morally grounded and like regardless of actions that he takes or anything. Like the rest of them are so fucked
in so many different ways. Speaking of being fucked and being a Lannister, Bran climbs up a tower and hears some noises and looks through a window, and he sees Sir Jaime, the best swordsman of the Lannister crew, straight up pile driving his sister from behind, and who happens to be the queen at the time. That doesn't go over well with Jaime. He walks over to the window, and Bran is sitting there, and it looks like he's going to maybe talk him through this. And he says, "The things I do for love," and he just shoves this fucking kid out the window, and he falls stories and stories and hits the ground. That's how the first episode ends. But
and you won't, spoiler alert, Bran stops liking climbing.
He stops also being able to climb things after this episode.
Damn.
In this episode also, this is where Viserys is like planning to marry Daenerys to the Dothraki. It's apparent right away that...
Man, it was killing you to want to say that name correctly, wasn't it?
The review we watched, which was a great review, loved this guy.
Oh yeah, very in-depth.
But he kept saying Viserys, and it was having a visceral reaction on my ears.
Yeah, I thought Corey was just gonna like leave the call.
His name is Viserys. Jesus, that was killing.
No, it was funny. It was literally every time he said it, you said it correctly. It was like,
and
it's
my
not
eye
that,
twitched. So I don't like to correct people, but when something's so wrong like that, it's a visceral reaction for me, and it gets me in trouble in public sometimes. Sorry for anybody I've ever done that to.
Actually,
that's one of my least favorite words in the English language. So that's the first episode. There's actually quite a bit that happens in that first episode. You meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of shows that will introduce you to that many people in one episode, and it's a little much. But Game of Thrones didn't seem to really overwhelm you with it.
Yeah, I think it was really like I think they did it right because they kind of broke down family by family and group by group to show you these are all the players.
Yes, I don't like when a show will take one whole episode to focus on one group, and then you're not going to see that group again for 3 episodes because they have to focus on the other two or something. I don't like that.
I will say, like, I'll just be upfront about this. Season 1 is probably my least favorite season of the bunch, not because of the story, but because HBO feels the need to cram as much sex as possible into everything when it first starts, and it just like takes me.
That
out
is
of
a
the
big
world
thing with this first season. Is there's a lot of sex, unnecessary moaning, nipples everywhere, and where it's great as a man to see that stuff in a show sometimes. This show really does overdo it in the first season. They really kill that down a lot over the next few years.
Yeah, when they realized they had something real here that people were interested in, they realized they didn't need to shoehorn like fucking 12 sex scenes an episode.
It may have been slightly genius to hook people in with all the boobs, but you know, they definitely had a story there, and this is a great fucking show. So,
which speaks volumes about how good a show it is, because like people's grandmas would watch this show with them and shit.
My in-laws watch this show religiously over and over again, and I have walked into a room while they're watching this show with a sex scene, and I'm like, is that not uncomfortable for you guys? It's very awkward.
And it's just something about watching. Yeah, like with your in-laws, like that's
it doesn't bother me, but I do look around and I'm like, is this not bothering anybody?
Everybody's cool with it. The 6-year-old in the corner is okay with it. Okay.
You know, it kind of goes from there, and in the next episode, Bran doesn't wake up, but he's alive, and he is in his bed, and they're watching over him and trying to tell if he's going to walk again, which I think the Maesters even say in that episode he's probably never going to walk again. But Ned unfortunately has to leave because in the first episode, the king, I didn't even say this, King Robert Baratheon came to Winterfell in the first place with the Lannisters to offer Ned Stark the hand of the king, which is his right-hand man, runs the whole 7 kingdoms whenever the king is away. The most important man, probably, the vice president of kingdom.
I guess we should mention the world Westeros is like the whole fucking place, and this is like the biggest kingdom in all the land.
They call it the 7 kingdoms.
Yeah, where the fucking Iron Throne resides, and it's like the throne of thrones, and it
which
looks
is
very
said to be made from the 1,000 swords of enemies past, but the actual throne itself in this show does not look that way. But if you watch House of the Dragon, they have rows of swords also melted together into statues down the steps. So I can see 1,000 swords in House of the Dragon. I think maybe the lore came from the old Targaryens with all those swords on the side too. And then it's just remained its 1,000-sword lore in this show.
Okay.
Ned is now on his way to King's Landing with his daughters. He's leaving his sons there. He's just taking the daughters for now. Because Sansa is probably going to be married off to the king's eldest son, who isn't actually his son, Joffrey Baratheon.
He looks strikingly like the queen's brother.
He looks a lot like Jaime. So do all of the kids. So take that as you will.
And as we mentioned, he enjoys pile driving his sister
straight up
all the time. And we ain't talking WWE here.
I mean, she yeah. I don't even have a joke that's better than that. This show is all about incest. It's great.
Would you like to clarify that statement, or are you good with that?
I'm going to keep it as is.
Okay.
This is also when Jon apparently had Tyrion actually gives a beautiful speech to him in an alleyway. You know, he calls him a bastard, and Jon gets all offended, and he says, you know, wear it like a suit of armor with pride. He says, don't forget you're a bastard because the rest of the world won't. So you may as well embrace it and wear it like a suit of armor. And it's a beautiful speech, which actually started, I think, Jon in liking Tyrion, kind of.
They even talk about how like he obviously gains his respect.
Yeah.
At a point
Through
early
this
on.
whole journey together, which Tyrion decides to go. John decides he's going to go join the Watch, which in this show is
The
basically
Night's Watch.
rangers in Night's Watch, who are rangers who go beyond the wall to protect Westeros from the wildlings
Should
and
probably
White
explain what the
Walkers.
wall is real quick.
We'll get there.
Okay. Just keep, for anyone listening, keep the wall in mind. We ain't talking about Mexico.
Not the one that Trump had the Mexicans build. I don't know if that's going to play well outside this country, but
If anything, it's the wall that Canada is building for us. So don't worry.
Yeah.
We're good sports here at Culture Shock.
Canada probably wishes they had a wall separating us.
Oh, they're planning it, I'm sure.
This country is a bunch of douchebags, and they know it. We love you, Canada. I wish I lived there.
Me too.
But John decides he's had enough of being the bastard at home, I think. Decides he's going to go with his Uncle Benjen, who is a ranger at the wall, which is pretty much the highest honor you can have as a soldier for the wall. So John decides he's going to go follow in his Uncle Benjen's footsteps and try to become a ranger.
I guess since it does literally basically start the episode off talking about like these crazy creatures north of the wall.
Yeah.
So the point of the wall is at least what most of the world believes is the point of the wall is to protect the kingdoms, the seven kingdoms, from the free, what the people they call them. You don't know this yet, but I can't separate in my head. They call themselves the free folk, the wildlings. They refuse to like kneel before any king. They believe in like just true freedom, and they rule around like as such. They have their quote unquote leader, but it's out of respect that they follow him, not out of a need or because they have to.
Exactly.
And that is like the belief that everybody thinks is like the real reason, the real things that the real reason the wall exists. But it's, you find out immediately as the show starts, that is not, that's a whole hoax. That is just what people tell their kids at night so they can sleep, and what people believe because they don't want to know the real truth, that there's something very dark and evil out past that wall. Do they say the name of them right out the gate, or do we figure that out later? I can't recall.
I don't think in that first episode they're called the White Walkers, but they might. I don't know. That kid that gets beheaded for abandoning his post in Winterfell, I'm not sure. I can't remember if he says White Walkers.
Okay. Well, regardless, they're called the White Walkers. We find that out. That's in brought season.
Up later.
Okay, but you're met with this scene of this guy with these piercing dark blue glowing eyes in the night, and that's how you know something fuckery is about. Some fuckery is about. Some black magic fuckery is about up in the north.
When Jon decides he's going to go to the wall, Tyrion decides to join them. He wants to see the wall because he wants to take a piss off the edge of the wall because the wall is thousands of feet high, and he wants to stand on the edge and take a piss. Which one of the reasons I love Tyrion is because of things like that. He sees the world as his playground. If
I was standing on a wall that was 1,000 feet high, even with my crippling phobia of heights, I'll just put it out there, I would probably want to take a piss off of it too. Yeah, because it probably wouldn't have even reached the ground before I was done.
Yeah, exactly. If any of it reached the ground as cold as it is.
Yeah, and when would I get another chance to do that? Piss off the world's end? Hell yeah.
Exactly.
As you flat earthers may believe.
Let's not get into that.
I'm not.
Jesus Christ.
That was an obvious...
can't believe anybody...
I know. It's... Again, Canada, I love you. I wish I could have been
yeah, please get us out of this country. If we have any Canadian fans, please help us get out of here. Blink twice if you're in trouble.
Blink. Anyway.
But they do get to the wall after a long journey and some beautiful words. Well, actually, before they get to the wall, it goes back to the Starks traveling to King's Landing, and Arya has made a friend with a stable boy, and she's just playing with him by the river, and They're just sword fighting, and Joffrey comes down and flexes his little fucking muscles and his little prince muscles and decides, you came at the princess, and he acts like he's trying to be honorable, but really he's just being an evil twat. And he
Product of incest, acting like a twat. Who would think it?
Yeah, who would have thought? Arya, being the stubborn, pig-headed girl that she is, lets her dire wolf, jump up and grab Joffrey's arm and bite it, and that ends up being a real big fucking issue for the show. Because Joffrey goes back that night, lies to his dad, Robert Baratheon, and his mom, Cersei, fucking twat. How it happened, she said that, or he says that Arya actually attacked him. And which, at the end of this, because Sansa won't stick up for Arya because she's a proper lady, and
I'll say right now, at this point in time, at this point in the show, I despised Sansa. I blamed all the bad things on her for a long time. Down the road, she does become much, 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 much better. Much like Jaime, I grow to like her by the end, but at this point in time, I fucking hate her.
She becomes quite the badass, actually, because of all the shit she has to go through to get there. But when they put her on the stand to back up Arya's story, she fucking doesn't, which makes the king decide that the only course of action is to kill Arya's direwolf. But Arya had already sent her direwolf away, so another snowball effect. Smart. So another snowball effect. The king decided, well, I guess Sansa's...
Cersei decided.
Or Cersei decides, I guess Sansa's direwolf will do.
And that's when we find out what a fucking evil bitch... Well, yeah. Other than the fact that she's getting trapped by her brother.
You're not evil if you get screwed by your brother, but you're evil if you get screwed by your brother and kill dogs.
Your morals are probably questionable.
They're a bit questionable.
But yes, we might not be evil, but we find out right here she's an evil bitch.
Yes, and that Joffrey is being groomed to be the same fucking thing.
And he's a little evil bitch too.
Yes, he is. He's worse than his mom.
Yeah.
And she quickly finds that out. Like Tyrion says to her, it's impossible to teach a dog obedience when you've put a crown on his head or something like that. He's so fucking right. Because within the show, I mean, we don't have to go chronologically, you know. Within the show, when Robert does die, because he does die in this first season, Joffrey does become king, and he's immediately a twat.
Just instantly. Like, he even defies his mom instantly because she thinks she has a hold on him. Ned Stark, who we talked about, he was supposed to be basically in charge until Joffrey grew the fuck up a little bit because he's like fucking 14 or something. I don't even remember his age, but he's clearly a fucking dumb little twat who just shows it at every possible turn. I don't think there's one scene in this entire show. Well, in the part of the show that he's in, no spoilers here, that he ever does anything decent ever.
No, honestly, I don't think
not a single time. There are times where he's somewhat neutral, but he's never decent.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when he's sitting there and Tyrion's having breakfast with the kids, I think he's sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, that's about as close to good as doing something good as he ever gets, doing nothing.
When they're in Winterfell, Tyrion even slaps him in the face and tells him to go pay his respects to Bran because he got pushed out the window. Well, fell.
Or say something decent or something, yeah.
He slaps him in the face twice.
And that's how we learn that Tyrion is the only redeemable Lannister for a long time.
Which is funny because the first time you see Tyrion, he's being woken up in a pigsty, drunk off his ass. So you don't think he's a good character, but he definitely ends up being one of the better ones.
Instead of hotels, he stays in brothels and he gets drunk a lot. And that never stops.
Does not stop the whole way through the season. At least he's consistent. At this point in the show, Jon is actually training at the wall now to try and take his vows, and he's quickly standing out, which actually I think pisses off his the training guy. I don't know if he has a name, but
I can't remember. He looks like fucking Dr. Cox a little bit.
He does kind of look like him. He rubs that guy wrong somehow. I think, and I don't know if it's because he's a bastard or what, but like all these other guys are rapists and criminals. Like he can't be worse. So I don't know. Maybe it's because he was a lord or...
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at first John sort of acts his upbringing, so to say,
He does.
and it just
He
doesn't fit in
he
like
shows
there.
his skill and gets a little cocky about it. And I think maybe
Yeah,
that guy didn't like it. I don't
he
know.
just yeah.
That guy ends
Regardless,
up playing a much bigger part in Jon Snow's time
surprisingly,
at the
yeah.
wall.
Like I was still. We'll get to that another day.
Yeah, it's another season.
But yeah, like John, he pisses off all these guys. Like they just don't like him. He's kind of a little arrogant. He's young still.
Yeah.
And he had even though he's quote unquote a bastard, he still had like a borderline
He
royal
had a lord.
upbringing.
He had a lord's upbringing. So.
Yeah, like he was treated very well by other than by the mother. But everybody else,
Catelyn hated him, but everybody else was very nice to him.
yeah. If she had just known the actual truth that nobody else known, she probably wouldn't have. But she thought that her husband cheated on her and had this kid and just came back with him from war. Like
it was all out of spite.
Are you fucking kidding me? But yeah, so I get it where she's coming from there.
I get honor and stuff in these times and this kind of world, but God, Ned should have just told her.
Yeah,
the fact that she hated Jon for so long and he could have stopped all that, and she wouldn't have ever spilled what he told her because Catelyn's very honorable. There was no reason to keep that from her, honestly. No reason.
Yeah, I mark that up as just a mistake from the storyteller, from George R. R. Martin. Like he could have totally made that better, but he just chose not to. For the sake of the story.
True. It was a better story to have her resent him.
Yeah.
It made for a better story, but it was so easily taken care of. So easily.
Oh, and the other quote unquote Stark who wasn't really a Stark, I guess we kind of forgot to mention Theon.
Theon Greyjoy, yeah, the little kidnapped boy who was basically their steward forever.
Yeah, he was basically like a prisoner of war, quote unquote, but Ned, being the guy he is, still treated him just as good as he treated his sons. Like he had everything he needed, was treated well. He had respect by like the community, and like as far as everybody was concerned, he was just another Stark. Like
he had the Winterfell cloaks and sword and shield on his. I mean, he had it all.
Yeah, they gave him. They
treated him very well, right. And he fucked everything up in this show.
Yeah, not in this season, but
no.
Yeah, like he's with them doing the thing, helping them out with Robb. He cares for Robb clearly, and the rest of them. He's questioning. He just is stupid sometimes.
He's too loyal to his stupid fucking father, and we'll get to that eventually. But not in this season. But we'll get to that eventually.
In this season, he's just another Stark, more or less. But he does let people like Tyrion get to him by saying shit. Who he did the same thing to Jon at the same day. Like he knows how to push people's buttons a lot.
He knows how to push people's buttons, but also kind of teach them a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah,
he's very, very smart.
Where was I going with that? There's so much backstory there.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We were just talking about the Starks. But yeah,
with Ned and Winterfell, with Ned at King's Landing now. He starts to realize that, I think he's given a letter by somebody that says that Jon Arryn, who was the hand before him, who died, was murdered, and he needed to look into it because Jon Arryn was looking into something very important. And Ned really, really digs deep into all this and kind of finds out some pretty fucked up stuff. That Jon Arryn absolutely was poisoned to death by. Does he figure it out it was the Lannisters?
Somebody tried to tell them it was the Lannisters. Like somebody,
okay.
I can't remember which. There's so many characters you get hit with in this in this right out the gate and in this first season, and most of them just don't even last through the episode they're introduced in. So it's like
it's true.
It's so easy to forget they exist. But somebody tried to say it was the Lannisters doing. They find out. I don't know if Ned ever finds out it's the Lannisters, but. We as the audience know that like are told that it's the Lannisters, so we know they're up to no good, and we can clearly see that they make a plot to basically Cersei and the king, who have been married for 17 years, fucking hate each other, and they just they're open to each other about that. They fucking despise each other.
There's a part of one of the episodes where they just straight up tell each other they hate each other
while drinking. at a desk. Like, they're just, fuck you, fuck you. Yeah, we both know that. But they've been together so long because most marriages, especially for royalty and lords and whatnot, was
Yep.
all arranged and for political reasons.
Which that one was, so.
And he believed that those were his kids, so, like, he wasn't gonna, like, fucking throw her to the curbside. Well, had he known all the truth,
He might have.
Which Ned discovers. He starts doing digging and starts to uncover all the truth about Jaime and Cersei, the children, the plot to kill the king, which they managed to do. They kill the king, that's why Ned's supposed to be in charge.
And not only does he figure out all of the Lannisters' dirt, but he also finds within the town one of the bastard children of Robert Baratheon, who actually would have been the king, Gendry. He doesn't become an important character yet in this season, but he does in the second season start to come up because he ends up on the road with Arya. But in this first season, you just kind of see him once, and it turns out he's the bastard son of Robert, but Ned doesn't do anything about it yet because he's going to come back. Unfortunately, that doesn't end up happening, but
that doesn't become important for a very long time either. Like,
the first time it becomes important that of his lineage is when the Red Woman's trying to suck blood out of him for the king's blood. But
fucking that's
way down
tale
the road,
for another episode. So I have a question for you. At this point, because we mostly kind of stayed in chronological order, we haven't jumped too far ahead in the season. Yeah. How hooked were you at this point?
By this point, I was already 100% in.
I was still struggling, and it was mostly because just the, like, every time I was, like, started to get pulled into it, it was like, you know, here's a fucking another orgy scene or something. I was like, I'm trying to keep track of what's going on. But
the sex doesn't take me out of it. I do feel it's unnecessary while I'm watching it. But it definitely doesn't take me out of it.
It's not like the sex takes me out of it. It's when it's just every other scene. It kills the pacing for me.
It does.
I guess is what it is. And that's why, like, the first season, I was told by my buddy, like, dude, I swear to God, you get to season 2, you're in it for the long haul. I was like, all right. So I did. And here I am.
I think I was pretty well hooked.
Straight out the gate.
Right out the gate, because as soon as Tyrion had that speech with Jon, and then in the second episode when he's telling him, swords may be your weapon, but these right here, these books are my weapons. The mind needs a book like the sword needs a whetstone. It was a brilliant line, and I fell in love with Tyrion. And I'm like, even if I don't 100% love all of these characters yet, Tyrion, like, I can tell already I'm gonna like everything he says.
Yeah, like, it was the end of the season that really, by the end of the season, I was really hooked, and it's because I thought I had the show figured out. I thought I knew what was going to happen. Like, everybody, like, when you watch so much shit, you just start to get a feel for that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And this show punishes you for thinking you know what's coming at every turn.
And don't fall in love with anybody.
Yeah, and it's fucking incredible. And I loved that about it. That's one of my favorite parts about the show, is that I couldn't tell you what was going to happen next. And I learned that by the end of season 1.
Yeah, I was actually kind of glad I didn't listen to the books till I was already where the books were.
Yeah, it would have actually sucked to know.
Like, I think it would have, yeah.
Yeah, like, I can put that aside for most things, but a show like this, I would have been so upset if I already knew it was coming.
Yep. But there's a ton in the books, like any book, to movie or TV adaptation. There's a lot in the books that were not in the show.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I would have known all the stuff that was in the show, and that would have bothered me, I think. Comic books, it doesn't bother me, but this would have bothered me.
99%, like, comic books are like the big thing where I really don't mind already knowing what's going to happen, though it is nice when I don't. But, like, for example, I watch a lot of anime, and what I like to do is, like, most anime, 99% of anime is based off manga, which is basically Japanese comic books, for anyone that doesn't know. Those are the source material. There's almost always more, and it's better. So what I do is I watch the anime first, knowing that once it's done, I'll go back and read the manga version, and see, like, all the stuff that wasn't adapted. And it's always super fun to do, but I hate doing it the other way around, because Then if the anime is not very good, if the anime deviates and it ends up being shit, it just ruins it for me instantly, and I can't even get through it.
So you prefer to watch it first?
Yeah, exactly, and then go
That
back
makes
and
sense.
see the source.
Yeah, I feel that way about a lot of things. Harry Potter, for some reason, didn't bother me. Like, I had read the first 4 books by the time the movie started coming out.
That there were only 4 books by the time the
Oh,
movies started
okay.
coming out. Yeah,
And it didn't really bother me that I had already read those 4 books. So I don't know. I think Game of Thrones would have been a different thing though, because there's lots of twists and stuff.
yeah.
Harry
I
Potter
mean,
doesn't really have twists.
I
It's
read those
just,
Harry Potter books when I was in elementary school. Like,
yeah.
there was no concept of it being adapted into a movie back then. I could never
No,
know.
not at all. They weren't doing a shitload of like books to movie things back then. It was a lot of original ideas back then, and a lot of them didn't work. So
I mean, there were clearly, like,
there
obviously,
were,
but like, I mean, like, To Kill a Mockingbird, the movie is a million years old, and the book is even older. But
but now
yeah.
they try to take every single book that comes out and make it into a movie.
And that's probably because of the success of the Harry Potter franchise. If that hadn't exploded like it did, we wouldn't have got Game of Thrones. We wouldn't have saw them attempt to do Wheel of Time. We wouldn't have seen fucking The Witcher TV shit. Like, none of that would exist today without
Harry Potter
probably.
started a lot of things, and I'm very proud of my boy Harry. This is where we enter Samwell Tarly, who ends up being another one of my favorite characters through the show, but starts very pathetic. He's a bit of a wuss coward who doesn't know how to swing a sword. He was sent there by his father because he was not a man, basically.
I have to say, I despise those characters 99% of the time
Most
in
of the time.
everything. I just hate them.
And if he hadn't been so endearing and actually courageous, as much of a coward as he is, he had courage in a lot of moments when other people wouldn't have. But John takes to protecting him real quick because everybody's kind of picking on him because he's a weakling, which makes him basically John's best friend pretty much immediately.
And fortunately for Sam, John had already earned the respect of the rest of them by then. So, like, him standing up for him actually meant something. It wasn't just like, oh, we're both being bullied, but I'll be the guy that takes it all.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't going to fuck with John, and because Sam was his boy, they weren't going to fuck with Sam as long as John wasn't around.
Yeah, they kind of just shrugged. It was like, fuck it, whatever, I guess.
This is when another one of my favorite things that happens in this show happens. Tyrion, on his way back from the Wall, stops at Winterfell to give Bran a design for a saddle he created that is good for cripples, because by this time Bran has woken up, and he stops by to give him the design so that Bran can ride horses, because he also loved to do that. And where Robb was being very snarky with him at first, kind of turns on it and goes, oh, what? He's being nice. What the hell is going on? He ends up offering him room and board and all that, and Tyrion, of course, says, I don't want your pity stay. I'll go stay at the brothels like I always do.
He just, let's be real, he just wanted to go fuck him more.
Yeah, he was going on it. He was going to do that anyway.
He was never going to stay.
When Tyrion he says, why are you helping my brother? He says, I have a soft spot in my heart for, what does he say, bastards, cripples, and broken things.
Yeah, because he himself, since we haven't mentioned, is a dwarf.
Is a dwarf, yes. In the books, a hideous fucking dwarf.
Oh yeah. They instead of casting a hideous dwarf, they casted Peter Dinklage, who is a very well respected Broadway
nice looking dwarf.
Yeah.
So they eventually give him a scar, but it didn't really make him ugly. He was still a good looking dude.
They actually used this. It's like in the books, there's a battle, and he has his fucking nose chopped off and like a deep gashing scar on his face that just further disfigures him. But in the show, he got one of those badass like sword scars that just made him look even more badass. Yeah. So it was like,
But after he leaves Winterfell, well, after giving Theon a good ribbing.
A jolly good ribbing, mate.
A jolly good ribbing, and basically telling him he's not a Stark and he needs to stop thinking he is. And then tells Theon he's going to go fuck Theon's favorite prostitute. He leaves Winterfell the next day, and pretty soon after that is captured by Catelyn, who by this point has found out that the knife that, we didn't even talk about the assassin that breaks into Bran's room and tries to kill him while he's asleep.
There's so much, like, it's hard to touch on every little bit.
that pretty much gives you everything you need to know. But the direwolf kills that assassin,
Fucks it
Bran's direwolf, and then Catelyn has the sword or knife that guy was going to kill Bran with, and it's a very nice Valyrian knife. And in this time period, not a lot of Valyrian steel exists, so it's important.
Valyrian steel is super fucking important in the series, and you will find that out down the road.
Valyrian steel and dragonglass are two of the most important things you can have. But so Catelyn finds out that this knife, I keep almost saying sword, this knife.
Well, it could be a sword depending on which character's equipping it. You know?
When Tyrion holds it, it's a sword. Sorry. But
no respect,
out,
Peter Dinklage. We have massive respect for you here.
Oh, fucking love you.
But everybody is open to be joked about on Culture Shock.
That's right. But she finds out through the elders of Winterfell that was actually Tyrion's dagger. And so when she runs into him after he leaves Winterfell, she decides she thinks it's him who tried to kill Bran. So she takes him to the Vale, to her sister Lysa, who is a fucking psycho. As soon as you're introduced to her, you walk in and her 8 or 9-year-old son, Aaron, is sucking on her boob, breastfeeding.
You realize she's not all there.
Yeah, she's definitely not in her right mind. But she takes Tyrion there to be tried for her son's death. And Tyrion, after being kind of abused in the cell for a couple days on the edge of that wall, which, holy shit, that would be a horrible cell to be staying in. Yeah. He finally goes out and decides he's going to demand a trial by combat, which is one of the coolest fucking moments in the first season. Because, of course, nobody's going to offer to help Tyrion, right? I mean...
Because in trial by combats in this world, it doesn't have to be you. You can have someone fight in your place as your representative. And who the fuck... Everybody there is, hoping to kill this guy. They're like, yeah, let me be the one that gets to kill this dwarf for some reason.
Yeah. And everybody wants to kill the dwarf.
Except one.
One man steps in, which ends up being one of the coolest fucking characters in this entire show.
Everyone wants to kill this dwarf. One man steps forward.
Named Bronn. His name's Bronn. He ends up being the only one that actually sticks up for Tyrion. For money, let's be honest, Bronn is a sellsword.
Oh, yeah. He'll do anything for some coin.
He'll do anything for coin, and he knows the Lannisters are loaded, so he smartly decides, you know what? I'm going to stick up for Tyrion here. I'm going to get him out of here and go get some coinage.
Massive coinage.
Easily disposes of the Ares like one of the finer knights.
We go on to find out that Bronn is kind of a badass motherfucker, to
yes,
quote a Mr. Samuel L. Jackson.
He really is.
His is the wallet that says badass motherfucker. And he goes on to be one of the most popular characters in the entire franchise from this point forward.
He climbs the ladder quite nicely in the show, too.
Yeah, no spoilers, but you're going to love Bronn for a very long.
Oh, yeah. If you watch the show, he's one of the characters you're going to love every time he's on screen. Robert is back at King's Landing, deciding he's going to try to kill Daenerys because she is trying to get across the Narrow Sea to take the Iron Throne, which technically Viserys is actually who should be on the throne at this moment.
And since we just briefly mentioned them, just small Viserys basically sells his sister to what's called a Dothraki warlord. They're basically like these just fucking hardcore barbarian-esque tribe of warriors, and they're like the best at being that type of character, basically. And so he uses his sister and basically trades her to the leader for promise of an army. So keep in mind that was all going on while all this other shit was going on that we've been talking about, because all these major players are all moving at once. And I just take a quick minute to gush about how fucking good the storytelling is in this series. Yeah. And one of my reasons I love it so much and loved it so much was the pacing. all this happened across just a couple episodes, but it all happened at the same time, and they were
Yeah.
really good at giving you pieces of the puzzles to move it forward without it ever being like confusing about who you were paying attention to. Like, you knew this is what was going on in this part of the world. This was happening up here, the north. This was happening down south, like to the west or whatever. And
In a very Vince Gilligan-esque type of way, this show actually did a foreshadowing very well as well. It would throw in a little line here and there, like they mention at one point the people who can pull their faces off and become other people. Just a real quick throwaway line in the first season, which ends up coming back in a big way.
realize that like
Yep.
they mention that like at first, like it doesn't even like mean anything to you yet, but that becomes important. A season later, or 2 seasons later, or whatever.
This is very much one of those shows that you have to pay attention to every word on screen because you're going to miss something.
Mostly everything has meaning that appears in this season and is when it's said by one of these like major player characters.
Yeah.
And there's very little screen time for unimportant characters. Even if they die in the episode they're introducing, they had some importance and it mattered.
Exactly.
What they did and said mattered. And keep in mind, Bronn and Tyrion left that kingdom together after he won Tyrion's freedom because they're going to be walking together for quite some time from this point on. Because the show does one thing excellently, and it's pacing, and they take their time moving the pieces across the world to where they need to be. They are not afraid to take seasons to get characters to meet up that you've been waiting for them to meet up. Like seasons, years have passed.
As we will find out with Arya and the Hound. At some point. The season's coming up.
But yeah, to go back to what you were saying, Daenerys and
Robert, the king, Robert, is planning to kill her because he found out that she has dragon eggs, which there hasn't been a dragon born in this world in hundreds of years.
Most people don't even believe they exist anymore.
People, they've been gone so long, most people don't even believe in them anymore.
Yeah, at this point in the story, we know that there are tales of these dark, undead creatures to the north that most people don't even believe exist, and potentially dragons that once existed, and these things that could be eggs. But we don't actually know any of that's true yet. We the watcher, know about the guys up north, so we're led to believe the dragons are real too, but people in this world don't know yet, and it's important to keep in mind.
And but when he's trying to plan the death of Daenerys, Ned strongly disagrees and can't go along with this because Daenerys is still a child, and he doesn't believe that this should be happening. He doesn't think they should kill a child, so he basically quits being Hand, throws the pin at him, which doesn't end up working because as he's trying to leave King's Landing, he kind of gets in a fight with Jaime Lannister, who they are two very good swordsmen, so it's actually a very well choreographed fight in the square. But then this coward-ass, pussy-ass guardsman from behind stabs Ned in the leg, which still pisses me off.
Yeah, but
and even it pissed Jaime off too.
Yeah, this is when you see like the first inkling that maybe Jaime isn't the just garbage pile of a human that we believe him to be, because he doesn't. He steps down from the fight and leaves instead of taking advantage of that situation.
He wanted a fair fight because Jaime's probably the best swordsman in the world in the show at this point.
Nobody believes he has any honor because he's known as the Kingslayer, because he killed the last king he was supposed to be protecting, because
but for
he was
very good
a
reason.
Psychopath.
He was literally melting people because he thought they were all evil.
So he made the choice to kill that man, which brandished him as like this fucking dishonorable piece of shit by basically the whole world over, except for a handful of people who knew it needed to be done. But we didn't know. We don't even know that really yet. We don't even know. We just know he's a Kingslayer that pushed a kid off a tower and apologized to sister WWE. So that's all we know. That's
literally what you're supposed to know about this guy at this point, is that he's just a douchebag.
Seeing him step down from taking advantage of like that cheap shot and just leaving instead is like confusing at first. Like you're not like you're like, wait, isn't he a piece of shit? That's when you start to realize everybody except Ned Stark in the show is kind of a piece of shit in some
That's
way.
right. They all have their moments where they're just the worst.
Except Ned. He was really written
Except
into the
Ned.
wrong universe.
I mean, that's right. Yeah. If he had been just a little shittier, he might have actually lived a little longer.
Had he been, had Ned Stark, it was like George R. R. Martin wrote a Tolkien character, one Tolkien character in this world, and it's Ned Stark, and it's like, wow, he is just
which is ironic because Sean Bean was in Tolkien things as well.
Yeah. His character Ned Stark is literally more honorable and good than Boromir from Lord of the Rings.
That's yep.
It's hilarious.
And he dies just as fast.
Yeah.
So the king decides he's not going to allow him to quit and throws the pin back at him. And he even tells him, hey, you're running the country. I'm going to go hunting.
He's like laying in bed with a hurt leg, and he's just like tossing the pin. He's like, yeah, I'm taking a break. Have fun. And he's like, the fuck? Okay.
He just quit, and he's giving him the kingdom.
Yeah. He's like, being the man he is, he does it.
So that's when he goes and finds Gendry in the town square and realizes the king actually has kids that maybe should be on.
When we mentioned earlier that he started digging, this is when that happened, and that's when he learns about the incest babies and Gendry and all sorts of other shit. And this idiot, I can't call him an idiot, this one honorable man in this whole series tries to do the right thing, and it leads to...
He does something really stupid and confronts Cersei about it. And that was his undoing, because Cersei she's a manipulative, evil bitch, and she's going to, if you're sniffing around, she's going to kill you.
She wasn't even going to. Like, let's remember that. It was Joffrey who decided that he was going to die.
She was trying to get him just to be a disgraced person that goes home.
And she even was shocked when Joffrey was like, fucking chop his fucking head off in front of his daughter.
That's what you don't realize about Cersei, because she's evil in the show, but there's a couple moments where something happens that she didn't want to happen. Like that was even too far for her. It isn't till the end of this show that she's like a cold-hearted, don't care bitch.
Yeah, she's like a bad person at first, but by the end, she's just off her fucking rocker.
There's one very specific thing she does that kills a lot of people that turns her completely evil.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, I think that's her main turning point. But at this point, she's just trying to survive, trying to get nobody to know that her kids are incest babies. She's trying to protect her family name.
Joffrey totally plays Sansa and like convinces her that he wants her to be the queen someday, and like that he's a good guy. But then he starts abusing her, and and Cersei even tries to explain to him like that you don't fucking do that. Chill out. Don't smack your like future queen in the face and shit. Yeah. So in his twisted mind, he's like, you're right, I shouldn't hit her. So he orders his grown guards, to just slap the shit out of her anytime she does anything that displeases her. And this is when I start to feel bad for Sansa, even though she kind of put herself right in that position. Like, it's like, fuck, she got played.
But lucky for Sansa, and one of the things she should have saw as a gift was Tyrion Lannister, even though she constantly saw him as a monster. He protected her maybe more than anybody in King's Landing.
And the Hound, mind you.
And, the Hound who physically protected her.
The Hound who had no problems killing a child because he supposedly touched the prince. He fucking murks that stable boy that was friends with Arya early on. No remorse. So you don't think he's a good guy till he starts protecting these Stark kids. Because he realizes how fucked everything is really faster than almost anybody. To his credit.
In the books, he straight up falls in love with Sansa.
And you could see that a bit.
Yeah. They show hints of it in the show, but in the book, he literally tries to talk her into running away with him and forgetting all of this world. And
Littlefinger tries to do something like that too.
Littlefinger, yeah. Well, he's a fucking creep.
Who we haven't even mentioned yet.
Yeah, that's weird. Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, is a very manipulative asshole. We didn't mention him or Varys yet. We were two very big players in the show.
Yeah, they're leaders of their own little camps.
They get a little more prominent going forward in this show. For the most part, the first season is like the Stark and the Lannister story.
Yeah, we realize that Varys and Littlefinger are key players, and they're doing something because they keep having these little chats.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I actually thought their goals were one and the same, and they were in cohorts together. But
Yeah.
that because they lead you to believe that. But down the road, we'll touch on them more. But just know that they're very important, and they have a lot more control of the goings-ons of the underworld side of things than most other characters would be led to believe.
They're both very good moles.
They're very smart, and they know how to position the pieces on the board get the outcomes that they are looking for.
In this Game of Thrones, they may be pawns, but they're pawns with a crown on their back. They know what they're doing. They know how to stay alive for the most part.
Yeah. They know how to stay alive, and they know how to move things to be beneficial to them without.
They know how to have the most powerful person on their side at all times.
Yeah, and they will do, and Littlefinger especially will do anything to keep that true, as you'll learn down the road.
So Robert the King is injured on this hunting trip because Cersei and Jaime planned it out that Lionel Lannister, I think his name's Lionel Lannister, the cousin, he's feeding him like strong wine to keep him super drunk so he doesn't focus on his hunt. And he's mortally wounded by a boar. He's
like someone that just, some nobody that just kind of is supposed to, that who's related to the Lannisters in some way.
Well, he becomes more prominent when he becomes that, the Septa Baylor, that guy that takes over the city for a while, and they have the thing on their forehead. I can't remember exactly what they're called.
Wow, I forgot all that. That's way down the road, though.
He's one of the main guys.
Yeah. But last names aren't, like, just because someone's named Lannister doesn't mean they're, like, on the royal level.
No, there's a lot of Lannisters that don't mean shit in this show.
Exactly, and that's something to keep in mind, is just because you hear it, I was like, oh, so he must be, like, related. Yeah, but, like, he's, like, the 19th cousin of, like, these people or something.
Which, by the way, I'd like to point out, Lionel Lannister was also fucking Cersei. So she just loves her family. Yeah, it's said in the show a few times.
Okay.
Like he's leaving her room naked a couple times.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay. Yeah, that's not in this season then.
No, not in this season. So he's going to die, and because nobody knows about his bastard children yet, and Ned is trying to move this along and try to get the truth out there, but at this point in the show, everything's so chaotic and moving so fast that he never really gets around to it.
And instead of telling his dying best friend, the king, who is Robert, on his deathbed about the truth, he just takes it upon himself to cleverly use the words in the will to, in his mind, fix the situation. Instead of, because he was supposed to take the kingdom over until Joffrey came of age, but in Ned, being smart as well, wrote until the rightful heir becomes of age to like kind of get around what he knew,
so he could try to get all his evidence together,
get all his ducks in a row, get his evidence situated. And I don't remember if Cersei was aware of that little word change or not. Probably not, because she probably would have had him killed instantly.
Yeah, I think that was more for the fans to see he wrote that in there.
Yeah, it's again, there's a lot of things. They're very good at feeding us, the watcher, information that isn't privy to the characters on screen, so that we know, but they don't know. And again, that's something you have to keep in mind. It was like, well, why didn't they blah blah? It's because they didn't know. We knew. They didn't know.
And while the king is dying, there's actually an attempt on Daenerys' life by a vendor of wine. There's a man who protects Daenerys named Jorah Mormont.
There's an older man with a voice that sounds like he should narrate things.
Yes. He's another one of my characters that I love in the show.
He instantly feels important.
He looks just like an older elderly man who would like give you good advice, but when you see him fight, he's a badass.
He's been around a sword for a very long time.
Unfortunately for him, though, you find out that he's a spy for the king, and he's trying to get a pardon from his past crimes, but he falls for Daenerys while protecting her.
Like this whole time, he feels like Daenerys' protector, like saves her from her fucking shitty brother several times, and stands up for her, teaches her, seems like a mentor of sorts.
Exactly.
But yeah, the whole time he's actually a fucking backstabby bastard. But
Yep.
as you said, he fell for her.
He fell for her. He decides to go against what he's there for. And when this wine vendor's trying to talk Daenerys into drinking the wine, Jorah comes over, and what you think is just intuition. Oh, he makes the guy, how about you try it first? And the guy won't drink it and tries to run away, which uh, obviously makes them realize the wine was poisoned. And Drogo does not take kindly to that.
Khal
And
Drogo, Dothraki war
right,
chief,
that's
reminder.
right. Right there, he decides, I'm going to take my Khaleesi, is what they call the wives of the Drogos, or
She's the
Khals.
queen.
She's the queen,
Khaleesi.
basically. That's her name is Khaleesi. Well, he decides he's going to take his Khaleesi to Westeros and take over the Iron Throne, right there, and then
He's
kills the
so
guy.
upset by the assassination attempt.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, you know what? Because they were just gonna go home and chill and just do their thing. But the assassination attempt relit the fire. And one thing these guys are good at is raping, pillaging, and killing people.
And Viserys, being the fucking idiot he is, decides, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm going to steal the dragon eggs. I'm going to buy my own army. Jorah stops him, doesn't let him leave the tent with the eggs. But then Viserys gets drunk and threatens the fucking baby that Daenerys has in her
At
belly.
this point, Khal Drogo and Daenerys has become pregnant with the future leader of the Dothraki.
Yes.
And one thing to know about these people is that makes her pretty much the most important member of their group, even to like the lower level people. Like, she's carrying the future fucking leader of the world as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
So that threat is a threat to all of their lives.
So that really fucking pisses Khal Drogo off, and they get a hold of him, and he does give him the crown that he promised he would give him.
He was promised a crown of gold.
He was promised a crown of gold, and he got it. What Drogo does is pours a pot of molten gold over top of Viserys' head.
He never said it wouldn't be liquid molten when he gave him the crown.
Which then melts down over his face and kills Viserys, which thank fucking God, because Viserys was a horrible fucking character.
And shockingly, to some, Daenerys isn't sad by this at all. In fact, she is delighted. The brother who used her, abused her, and treated her like shit, that was the gift. That was like the gift that she always wanted.
Exactly.
He's now dead, and the guy, the father of her future child, was the one that did it for her. So she's with this group now, hook line. She is now Dothraki as far as she's concerned. She's fucking fine with it.
She fully embraces it.
She had issues. There were issues there. Not that we. In the book, she was much younger, so in the show, it seemed weirder. But it was just because they aged everybody up for the show, so it wasn't.
They had to.
Weird. Oh yeah, they had to.
Even though if you watch House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra in the one scene with Matt Smith, I will not say what happens, but it's very uncomfortable how young she looks. She's supposed to be like 14 or 15, but she's actually in her 20s, but it's a very uncomfortable scene. But anyway, I'll brush past that because that's a whole different thing.
For the greater good. Anyway.
But this is right around when Robert Baratheon decides to go ahead and kick the bucket, which puts cunt Joffrey on the throne.
Because they instantly ignore his wishes, regards, and everything. Throw Ned in a cell forcefully set Joffrey on the throne before Ned could. Because Ned, I think we briefly mentioned this, he tried to give Cersei a chance to like do the right thing. She decides to do the opposite of that and double down on being a evil bitch. And as attempting to disgrace him, basically ruin his reputation, disgrace him, and just kick him out of King's Landing, sending him back home was the goal. Sansa is basically Joffrey's thing at this point. Promise of and that becomes painfully clear.
Yeah,
Arya has been being taught how to fight because she didn't want to just be
by
a
Syria
princess one.
Farrell.
She had no interest in being like a princess
No,
or anything.
nope.
She
She was always a tomboy. She wanted to learn how to fight swords, bows. She
Yeah,
wanted
so
to learn
she
all
was
that.
off doing that. Sansa was basically being led around by Joffrey. Joffrey was now forcibly put on king, and this is when he realizes he's in charge, not his mother, and he starts the true cunty nature of this fucking piece of shit starts coming out in full swing.
Yeah, he really. I can't even explain how much of a twat he is without you guys watching the show, but he's one of my least liked characters ever in TV, and
We actually are led to believe that he's as evil as it gets in the show at this point. Which,
yeah,
when we get to later seasons, we'll explain. Oh, what sweet summer children we all were, because he was nothing but an angry toddler in comparison to what's to come. But
yep.
yeah, we'll get to that in later episodes when we cover those seasons.
And because of Joffrey's past with Arya, with the fighting down by the river,
In a van. Wait.
They fought in a van down by the river, and because of that past, as soon as he takes over and puts Ned in a prison cell, he decides, I better get Arya too, sends his men to go get Arya, but Syria Farrell's a badass and gets her out of there. And she escapes into the city, which you don't know that yet, but eventually you find out she's been kind of surviving on scraps in the city.
And as Ned's being led to, like, his punishment, basically. We don't know he's being led to the execution block yet.
Yeah.
Only Joffrey knows they're being led. He's threatened with either death or tell everybody, like, renounce your fucking claims and everything, and just
he wants them to publicly tell everybody he's a traitor and that Joffrey is the rightful king.
And then he'd be banished off back home, basically, and with his life in hand, mind you. But
which he doesn't want to do because he's a man of honor, but his daughter Sansa begs him.
Yeah.
And he does accept and say, fine, I'll do it.
But on his way to that, he sees one man in this town that he can trust and just gets him to, like, please save Arya, yada yada, and he does. So that's why she is
Arya. But not before he goes up on the chopping block, admits that he's a traitor, calls Joffrey the rightful king, and Joffrey, when he's supposed to announce that he's going to spare his life and show him mercy, he instead decides he's going to cut his head off, and which just turns the whole show around. Because if he had kicked Ned and the kids out and sent them back to Winterfell, I think, as pissed as Ned would have been, I don't think he would have ever revolted up for a war.
Before you go, I think it's important to note that his oldest son, Robb, at this time was already staging a military campaign. He gained the respect of everyone up north, convinced them to all come together, and already started marching to King's Landing to basically, like, save his family, his sisters, his dad, and basically just, like, fucking slap the Lannisters for being bitches.
But I think if they had run into Ned and the girls on the way and realized they didn't have them anymore, I don't know that a war would have ever started.
Ned would have convinced him to just go back home and just live their life.
But at the same time, this is all going on. Goodbye, Ned Stark. Your head is now gone.
And bear in mind, Joffrey made Sansa, his eldest daughter, watch him get beheaded, as a threat, and just he got joy out of seeing her hurt by this.
Not only watch that, he put his head on a spike at the front of the castle and then made her go stare at it. That's the kind of evil fucking twat he is.
And we see her almost fucking just push him right off the fucking ledge.
Which would have ended all
after
that
getting
right there.
The shit slapped out of her by the guard, makes her stare at her father's fucking piked head, and she starts walking towards him, clearly with the intent to do something.
And the Hound, thinking as smart as he does, this is not the way to do it. He pretends like he's helping her wipe her mouth off, but really he's trying to stop her because she would have also been beheaded and put up there.
This is when you learn that there's a lot more to the Hound than just killing stable boys.
He was smart enough. Like, you kind of don't realize he was stopping that if you don't really pay attention to it. It does kind of look like maybe he was just trying to help her with her mouth because it was bleeding. but the underlying thing is he actually was stopping her from fucking her whole life up.
And I don't know about you, but this is the point. That was the point where I realized, like, maybe it's too. This isn't the kind of show where you can just judge someone as good or bad. There's
No,
so
you
much more
can't.
depth. Every
Everybody
character
switches. Everybody
is
moves around so
complex.
much.
Yeah, there was so much complexity with all of these characters that you're introduced to. Like, there was no right or wrong necessarily. There were characters who were clearly villains, and
Yeah.
then there was everybody else. And there was just questionable decisions, actions, thoughts. At the end of the day, though, it was that complexity that makes them all realistic and believable.
Yeah.
It's something I don't want to underplay at all. And with this show is, well, they'll do something in one episode that just makes you fucking curse them to hell, and then the next episode it's like, wait, they're like, he just saved this person. Like, if not for him, he. And then you just get conflicted feelings about some of these characters for long periods of time, and it makes you confront that concept of like morality, and like, it's not a black and white world that they're in, and there is a lot of gray. There has to be a lot of gray, and I personally love shit like that. So that's probably when I was hooked.
Yeah, and in case any of you didn't get it from that, this show actually has some very deep lessons behind it that you can learn. It's not just a stupid, mindless fantasy show. There's actually a lot of really important things you can take from this show. But over on the other side of the oceans, Daenerys now, they get to a village, the Dothraki, and she finds out that they've been raping every woman, basically, that comes along in all these villages, and she didn't know that before, but she just didn't want to see it.
Daenerys was still naive to the world.
She was still a kid, basically.
Like, these were tribal warriors. When they took over a town, they took the women as their reward.
In the histories, all the books will show you that shit really happened, and
it was just like an accepted fact of war in this world.
Even the one woman who she saves from being raped says, "Oh, they had already raped me." Like, what she says, like 8 times or something.
Yeah, like they'd already been raped for days before.
Yeah, like so she realizes they've been doing that for days, and she tells them they have to stop, and they don't like that, of course, because that's their nature.
Though the leader, who was like,
Drogo,
out of his respect for her, Khal Drogo,
he supports her.
Because she had the courage and the strength to stand in front of him and say, "These are mine. I claim these women as mine." And he was like, "Okay," but his men were like, "Fuck you."
One guy specifically didn't agree with him, and ended up cutting Drogo. Well, they fought, and of course, Khal Drogo won. But he did get a little cut on his chest, which
he led him. And the worst part is, in a show of strength, he allowed him to cut him just to show him, even if you cut me, it means nothing. You are weak. I am strong.
And he was very wrong about that, because that, of course, got infected, because back in these days, they didn't have penicillin. So,
and the sword has probably been cut and ran through so much diseased shit.
Exactly. So Khal Drogo starts to fall ill in these episodes because of that. And this witch lady, who is one of the ladies that Daenerys saved, actually says she can heal Drogo by sacrificing a horse. But what she doesn't tell her is dark magic. She can use dark magic to save him. But this sends Daenerys, the pressure of this sends Daenerys into premature labor. And Jorah decides the best course of action is to take her back into that witch, because she's also like a doctor-ish type person. What she didn't know she was doing was actually sacrificing that baby. And
while she did save Cal's life, he was just a brain dead.
He was a vegetable.
He was a vegetable. Like,
she killed the baby to save Drogo, but he couldn't get up, And the witch says, "Listen, I did this on purpose. He's a bad person. Fuck you all. They've raped us for." That's when she says he raped us for days before you even saved us. And so she did it on purpose, and she ends up getting burnt at a stake. But
not just burning it. Daenerys sets up this whole thing because she puts Khal out of his misery and just suffocates him while he's like laying there, just because what the hell kind of life is that, especially in these days. It was like this strong warrior that she fell in love with was now just a, a shell, like with that was breathing with nothing else left of him. So she like set up like this whole spiel. This is when it had been hinted at that she couldn't be burned. Before this, I think that's important.
The unburnt,
yeah. She carries with her the blood of dragons, the Targaryens. They were like the true royal lineage of Westeros,
which is what Viserys thought he was.
Yeah.
But there's a couple hints throughout the show, like the one time a prostitute drips wax on his chest from a candle, and he goes, ah. So obviously, you know, they throw little hints there that he's obviously not
and
the right
her
one.
Hands get like stuck in like hot coals and they come out fine, and it's like, whoa. So you realize she is like the actual true successor, not him.
Yeah.
And so in her mind, she believes in it so fully that they have him construct like this fire pit, not pit, but like this hut. They strap the witch to it. They put the body of Cal in it, her 3 eggs, and she walks into it. They light it on fire, and she goes into it and spends the night in flames. And then morning comes.
Morning comes, and Daenerys rises with 3 brand new baby dragons. And right there, everybody bows to her, including Jorah, because I think that was the moment he truly accepted her as his everything.
Like at this point, a lot of the Dothraki defected because of the dark magic, and they just thought it was evil. They wanted nothing to do with it. But the ones that stayed behind, they realized they made the right choice, and every single person bowed to her as like the leader. Like she was now in charge.
And that was a pretty fucking cool way to end that season, actually, with the 3 dragons. And they didn't even look bad either. Like a lot of times CGI in these early shows is pretty bad,
and bear in mind this is like 10 years ago at this point. But yeah, and so this little girl that was traded to a tribe, basically as a political move, grew throughout this season to become this fucking basically like a goddess to these people. Like she walked into flames and lit and came out unharmed with dragons. Like as far as they were concerned, she was like from a fucking divine being. Their loyalty was now always from that point
and
on.
Take it from me, she is not done growing from this moment on. Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, Daenerys Targaryen will later have 45 names attached to that. Yeah. And we will do our best to mention them as time goes on in future episodes. Is there any other super major plot points that really needs addressed?
Just a couple I can throw in there real quick. Tyrion does go see his father Tywin, who is in the field fighting against Robb Stark's troops. And Tywin does tell him to go back to King's Landing and act in his stead as Hand of the King, which Cersei doesn't take too kindly to when he gets there.
It blows everyone's mind because Tywin always looked at Tyrion as a just clueless buffoon, an idiot monster. On top
and
of it.
Blamed him for the death of his wife.
They all did.
Mom.
Everybody but Jaime did.
Everybody but Jaime. Jaime loves his brother, but
that's something to keep in mind. This is another thing that made you start questioning whether Jaime was like the bad guy he was built up as or not. Was he was the only one that treated Tyrion with respect and as family out of everybody. Like he was the only one.
Yeah. Robb's bannermen in the north declare him king of the north after Ned is killed. They all decide that he is the true king and they're going to follow him, which is a very large part of the north, which is a pretty good army actually. And Robb's actually doing a hell of a good job taking things over.
He's the youngest king ever, and he's just winning every battle, everything. He's actually perfect.
Quite the strategist, and Tywin's actually kind of scared of him. That's why he sends Tyrion back to King's Landing. He pulls a little bit of a trick on Tywin, and they end up capturing Jaime Lannister and keeping him as their prisoner. There's a lot more about that in the next season, but...
Small tidbit, he does admit to Bran's mother that he was the one that pushed him out the window.
Yeah.
Which makes you, again, further question,
exactly.
What the fuck is up with this guy?
The only other thing I can really think of is Jon has a bit of a crisis. Oh, you know what? No, there's There is a night at the wall where the White Walkers actually get into the Lord Commander's room and they try to kill him by shooting him a bunch of times with arrows, and he won't die. They chop his arm off, he's still not dead, and they end up burning him and he dies. So the Lord Commander believes him about the White Walkers, but
Oh yeah, the dead they rise.
yeah, the dead rise. That happens back at the wall, and John's trying to decide whether or not he stays at the wall and honors his vows, or if he goes back and joins Robb in his fight. And he does actually leave to join Robb, but Sam and the others go and get him and bring him back.
His Night Watch brothers, basically, at this point, because they've all like accepted each other and they're like fucking loyal to each other. They convince him to like stay and serve his watch because otherwise they would have to hunt him one day.
And they don't want to do that because I think he even makes a joke that we can't take you. You'll just end up killing all of us or something like that.
Yeah.
That's about all the other stuff. And then that guy ends up helping Arya. He cuts all her hair off and sneaks her out of the town as a boy going to the wall.
She's very small and everything, so it's really easy to make her just look like a young boy at this point.
So
chops her hair
it was
off.
Pretty easy for him to get her out of that. She kills her first person this season, though, with Needle. Her sword is called Needle.
And then gives a speech about how she should do it again.
Yeah.
She loves killing.
And that's where you start to realize that Arya is kind of...
Yeah, I'm good at killing fat boys. I enjoy killing fat boys. I'll kill you too. I'll kill this fat boy too.
That's pretty much everything about the season, though.
Yeah. So I guess we should... Yeah, we definitely need to give our thoughts on this. Let's go ahead and lead off there.
Well, this first season, where you're right, it is probably one of the weaker ones just because of it was still trying to find its footing.
Yeah, I don't think HBO didn't have faith in it, clearly. Like I said, it wasn't any fault of the writers.
What I like about Game of Thrones is it's very... You don't have to be a fan of the genre of fantasy to like this show. There's a lot of story in there that can grab you, even if you're not a dragons person. Like the stupidest joke... The stupidest joke out there that I hated was your stupid dragon show's on. It was barely even about that.
There was only there was less than 10% of the show had dragons in it.
I don't have like a list of my seasons ranked or anything like that, but it would probably be in the bottom half of my seasons. But it's a great first season compared to other shows I've seen. There's a lot of first seasons of shows that just
speaks volumes
will kill you.
about how much better it gets as it goes.
Yeah. And the show does get better and better every season.
Despite what people tell you about season 8, I still enjoyed it.
I still loved it. It was not the way I wanted it to end in some of the spots, but season 8 was still very, very good.
Yeah. When we get to our episode about season 8, you're not going to just hear us sit here and bitch about it like a lot of other people do.
I have very few complaints about 8, honestly.
Yeah, so if that's what you're thinking is going to happen, it's not.
You may as well not listen to the other seasons.
Yeah,
but as a show as a whole this season, it's a good 7 out of 10 for me. Like, it's still very high up there, but...
Anything specifically about it that gives you that rating, or just like...
No, just off the top of my head, if I had to give it an out of 10, I'd say it's about a 7, because I like to base the rest of the show off of a scale of 10 on its own. I'm not basing this off of other shows. This is like...
Just in the world of Game of Thrones.
In the world of Game of Thrones, it's a 7 out of 10.
Compared to all other seasons, it's a 7 out of 10. I'm curious to see what your highest one is going to be, because I'm not sure. There's a couple it could be.
I pretty much already know what my highest one is, but I'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that. That's why I'm looking forward to finding it. I'd probably have to agree with you if we're just framing it in the world of just Game of Thrones stuff. It's probably, I'd say, a 7 out of 10, maybe a little higher, give or take. And that's just only due to just how impressed I was with the willingness to just fucking kill people. Seeing Ned Stark die blew my mind. That was like, I was like, okay, he's gonna survive. They're gonna go back north. They're gonna set up, come back there. Like, I was being a snarky little prick. how I thought the story was gonna go, and holy fuck, I love being wrong about that shit. It's so nice and refreshing.
Yeah.
So like, I was hook, line, and sinker, and the pacing blew my mind. I am someone who is willing to sit there and watch hours of nothing if it's meaningful and leads to something like a
Me too.
payoff.
Me
Like
too.
it just enhances the payoff to me. I don't need it to suck and supercut all the fucking
No.
build
It's
up.
amazing how many movies I've watched in my life that were kind of very slow for the first 45 minutes. And because the other 45 minutes to an hour was good, I forgave that whole first 45 minutes.
Or I was even glad it was, because all
Yeah.
that did was, because it was all build up for the payoff, like the crescendo.
Yep.
Like, yeah, and I love when a movie or a show takes its time to get to its point, as long as the time it takes is meaningful.
Yeah.
If it was just a bunch of fucking boring bullshit that served no purpose and had nothing to do with the lead up, which a lot of things do have that problem, and that's why I'm so fucking picky, then I would have hated it. But because that time, that slow pacing, it was all meaningful, it served a purpose, it taught you something that pays off down the road, even if it's seasons down the road. Like, I spoil it, there is a period of time where Tyrion and Co literally walk across fucking a continent, and it just takes them like 3 seasons to get where they're going, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
But it makes so much sense when they get there. And I just love it. I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker. And that will be, I'll just tell you now, that will be my one complaint with the final season when we get there. I won't sugarcoat that.
I have one big one that's kind of in that realm as well.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else you want to say?
No, just that the show, if you're into this kind of stuff at all, this show's going to get you hooked in the first season. I'd say if it's not 100% hooked by the end of season 1, get to the end of season 2 and you'll never put it down. But season 1 had me hooked, and I'm kind of picky about my fantasy stuff. I like to digest it all, but I don't like a lot of it. A lot of it is horrible, and Game of Thrones exceeded my expectations when it came to fantasy and medieval and dragons. And
it's second, in my opinion, it's second only to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
In that realm, in that fantasy realm, like that high.
Yeah,
fantasy.
because they're very similar. So
there's a lot
they
of
are in the
comparisons
same realm.
Yeah, but I mean, Lord of the Rings is,
to me as well. Lord of the Rings is a little above it.
It's the source material for all fantasy to come after it.
Especially since Lord of the Rings definitely stuck their landing where Game of Thrones kind of shook a little. If Game of Thrones had ended perfectly the way I saw it, it might have even been a hair above Lord of the Rings, but because it kind of stumbled at the finish line, Lord of the Rings is still better because it ended very strong. But
I don't even like to make the comparison. Like, it's not like I'm saying, this one it has to be better. It's like, yeah, it's just in the world of fantasy, those two stand at the summit. Lord of the Rings just is at the peak, and Game of Thrones is like the one that couldn't quite get there, but it's just right there. It's so close.
Yeah. They're very neck and neck. If you like Lord of the Rings, please give this and you haven't seen this, please give it a watch. You'll really enjoy it.
You just said Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I said if you've seen Lord of the Rings, please watch
this. Okay. I thought you said if you hadn't seen Lord of the Rings. No. Yeah, absolutely.
If you like Lord of the Rings and you haven't seen this, give it a watch.
Even if you don't like Lord of the Rings, because this was like a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah,
everybody and their grandma watched this show as it was airing. It was I never before, there hasn't been a show before it or after it where I've seen that kind of just everybody was into it. Your friends that made fun of you when you were growing up because you liked things like Magic the Gathering while they played like fucking basketball or something. Even if you like that too, but they give you shit for being a nerd, they watched the show.
I did both growing up.
But... Yeah, me too. That's what I'm saying. Even if you did, but you know what I mean. Like those people that made fun of you for liking your dragons and your shit. Like even they wanted to know what happened next. Mm-hmm. Man, the dragon was so cool.
The dragons and House of the Dragon are so fucking cool.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think the plan is not. We're gonna. Well, especially like I enjoy doing content like this, and I know Corey also likes doing content like this, where we just, instead of like just sitting here making a shit ton of jokes, so that we like WWE pile driving aside.
Well, we have to have some.
Yeah, exactly, clearly. But like, I love to do this informational stuff. Corey definitely is also into it. If you like this kind of content, please let us know because we enjoy making it. But we'll try to make whatever you guys want us to make, and things that we want to do. Regardless, it will be done. But let us know. Where can they let us know, Corey?
If you want to let me know any of that or just call me an idiot, you can go to Facebook. We are Culture Shock Podcast. On Instagram, it's Culture Shock 21. And on Twitter, where I do most of my work, it's CS Podcast 21. Come and talk to me.
If you haven't seen the show, if you have questions about the show, if you just want to tell us we're fucking stupid because we already told you we like season 8, feel free, come along. We'll tell you all the ways you're wrong, and or you're right when you agree with us. But yeah, let us know if you like this kind of content because we've been trying to make it more, and we really enjoy doing it.
That's very true. We do. I love making the jokes in the episodes where it's all of us and we're talking about something fun, but I also like these informative ones for people who, because I listen to a lot of this stuff that's just people talking about a show I like or a movie I like, or I really enjoy these kind of podcasts, so I want to do more of these kind of episodes.
I watch tons of content about like the history of video games and gaming in general that I would love to share with you guys if there was interest for that. But it definitely would be a more information-driven style, 100%. But I would love to do that, so I'd like to know if there's any interest out there. Just let us know.
But that's going to do it for our Season 1 Game of Thrones episode. Please come and let us know that you enjoyed that. Anywhere you get your podcast, please go rate us 5 stars and give us a nice little review. That helps us out a lot. From all of us here at Culture Shock, thanks for listening. The things I do for love.